Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone. We have a few more folks filing in, but we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome to Getting Started with Dedoose. My name is Dr. Sara Grummert. I'm with Dedoose and also the Institute for Mixed Methods Research. And today I'm going to be taking you through really the core features, functions, and benefits of Dedoose. I also want to make a quick note about account groups versus project access, since that's a frequently asked question. Going to give you a rundown of what data types work really well in Dedoose, and then I'm going to share my screen on Dedoose, and we're going to take a little tour, and I'll also do a mini training session as well. If you have any questions, please log them in the formal Q&A function, and I'll make sure to pause periodically to answer those. All right, let's get going. So first off, the core benefits of Dedoose and what makes Dedoose different from other qualitative data analysis platforms. The primary one is Dedoose is cloud-based. So everything is stored in the cloud. That means it's also cross-platform compatible. This means you can use Dedoose on a Mac or a PC, same exact features. You won't have to worry about any compatibility issues. You can log in on a PC one day, a Mac the next. Doesn't matter at all. All of your project data will be the same and the features the same as well. This also opens up the real-time collaboration features. So because we're cloud-based, you just add collaborators to your project via email in that project access workspace that we'll go over today. And then you're literally collaborating on the same exact data at the same time, very similar to a shared Google Doc. So you don't have to worry about merging projects or worry about saving your work, anything like that. Something else that is unique to Dedoose is that you can have unlimited collaborators. Collaboration comes included with every single plan. That's a primary reason why our founder created it. And you can also collaborate with anyone in the world. So again, cloud-based opens up a lot of these options for you. In terms of the types of data that you can use in Dedoose, really any kind of data that you can think of. So of course you have your core qualitative data sources surrounding transcripts, any type of documents, memos, text-based data. You can also upload multimedia. So if you want to code directly on video, for instance, or code portions of images, whole images, and also audio files, work really great in the system. In terms of your mixed methods data, just know that Dedoose has a survey import feature. I can link you to a survey webinar that we did and a 1-hour deep dive on how to use that specific feature. And that means you can upload spreadsheets. I really like the Excel format. It's really easy to keep all of your survey data in one single spreadsheet, both your quant and your qual. Upload it to Dedoose. Dedoose does its magic. It can disentangle the quant from the qual, but it's also integrated for you. So you can do some really nice relational or comparative analysis pretty immediately. I should also note you can do some quantitative calculations in the system as well. I'll be sure to flag some of those for us when we're inside Dedoose. And I should say, so the one thing that I would not use Dedoose for is if you're doing like really advanced quantitative analysis. So if you're trying to do structural equation modeling, really advanced quant, Dedoose would not be recommended. However, surveys, ANOVA, different correlations, t-tests, Dedoose comes included with all of those. And I mentioned a little bit about this before, but you have access to interactive data visualizations. Dedoose has pre-populated charts for you that can help scaffold your analysis, but you can also build your own. And we go through those in our advanced topical webinars. So if you want a deep dive into different charts, be sure to sign up for one of those. And lastly, you can export your findings in various formats. That's another thing I really liked about Dedoose when I first started using them. You can export your data via Word documents, Excel spreadsheets. So if you want to get all of your coded data out, or if you want to transition to a different platform, They have a file format that allows you to export the project so that it can be compatible in other software. So they're really underscoring their value system of it's your data, you should be able to do what you want with it. Now for a couple notes on plans and pricing. So our standard monthly plans, you can do them both on a month-to-month basis or prepay for an annual plan. Your individual plan, so just one user, that's just under $18 per active month. Active month means you're only charged for the months that you log into the application. So if you do analysis for 3 months and then you don't log in for a year, you won't be charged for that year, but your data will still be there for you when you log back in. With small group, that's 2 to 5 folks. That's $15.95 per active month. And then large group, it switches to not active months, but a fixed user rate. So how many folks are in your account group? This is listed as 6 to 12 users. You can go over 12 users, but I like to cap it for these presentations to then recommend, because if you're going over 12 users, the Premier plan that we'll talk about in a moment is probably more ideal for you. But that's $13.95 per enabled user. So if you have folks in your account group that aren't going to be using the platform for an extended period of time, you can go into your accounts workspace and disable them, and then you won't have to pay for their monthly rate. So $13.95 per enabled user. Then again, if you're pushing really over 10 people in your account group, I highly recommend looking into our Premier plan. You can have up to 20 folks in there. It's an annual subscription. Don't have to worry about monthly payments, and it also comes with some really great capacity building and applied methods training. So hands-on training and project-based consultation throughout the year with researchers from the Institute for Mixed Methods Research. And personally, that's just fun for us as well as researchers to hear about your projects and support you throughout. If you think you're going to have more than 20 users, Enterprise would be your best bet. This is a custom amount of seats or unlimited. Again, it's an annual rate, a lot of personalized training and capacity building sessions bundled in with that plan, including a train the trainer program, which a lot of universities and research organizations like. We come in, we can train up a subset of your team to be expert users. And so then if you don't want to rely on us in the future for those project-based questions, you can go to your designated trainers. All right, and both of those plans come with a personalized support and resource portal, so it really helps with account administration and onboarding as well. SSO can also be included in either of these plans. If you want to know more about those and you want to chat about them, go to dedoose.support/org plans and you can schedule a meeting. Alrighty, a quick note here about account group versus project access. I like to flag this. So if you want to add a collaborator to your project, and I'll show you how to do this today, you just load up the project, you go to your access workspace, you can set different access groups for different people, and then you just add them via their email address. Now it's important to know that adding someone to your project does not impact billing in any way. It does not add them to your account group. So account groups, you can think of that as just the billing hub. How many people are in your account group, that's who you're responsible for paying for. But project access is completely separate. Even if you're in the same account group as someone, you do not have access to their projects. Completely separate, highlights the data security standards at Dedoose. Any questions about that point? Okay, good question. What happens if you invite someone to a project and they don't have a Dedoose account yet? They'll receive an invite email, and within that, they can activate their own account. And if you don't want to add them to your account group, they could use the 30-day free trial, or they can sign up for their own monthly individual plan or small group plan. Good question. Alrighty, on to data types and data prep. So we've talked a bit about this already, but I just want to emphasize some different file formats that work really well. So any text-based data that you're working with where you want to do a text-based analysis, so interviews, focus groups, document analysis of the actual text, Word document is going to be your best bet, gives you the most flexibility in the system. However, If you have PDF data and you have, for instance, like writings in the margins, or maybe there are pictures embedded within the document, you can absolutely upload PDFs. Dedoose will give you the option to code it as an image or code it as text. So you'll have that option. But if you're doing, if the core of your analysis is text-based, highly recommend converting it to a Word document. Just a much more seamless experience. For multimedia, like I said earlier, video, images, and audio all work really well in Dedoose, and those are the file formats for you. And then spreadsheets, if you have any survey data, you can also add like demographics, any categorical variables that you want to attach to any of your files. You can do so via Excel or a CSV. And then I also have this reminder here along the bottom. You can import data from other software as well. You should see an option to export via QDPX format, and that allows you to transfer between these different platforms. Any questions about data types before we hop into Dedoose? Alrighty, great. Let's keep moving here. I'm going to transition my screen share over to Dedoose, and feel free to follow along. This will be like a little mini training. Alrighty, so when you first log into Dedoose, if it's your very first time, you're going to be landed on a demo project that's going to have a bunch of data in here. The first thing I recommend you do is go to your projects workspace. So along the top here, these are your different workspaces in the platform. You'll see projects more towards the right. This is where you can create your own project to play around in. This is also where you'll see any projects that you've been invited to. So you can hit that create project button on the bottom right, or you can also hit the little addition icon on the top right. Throw in a title. You can also include a description or a date, for example. And then a note here about this extra layer of encryption. Everything in Dedoose is already encrypted in transit and at rest. This is a good option if you have highly sensitive data, such as data like videos of medical trial patients, things like that. If you enable this extra layer of encryption, it can be risky because if you lose your encryption password that you create, we can't help you recover your data at all and you'll be locked out. So that's why we, say use it wisely. But again, it was instituted for highly sensitive data. So if you do have an IRB that's requiring that, just know that that's a nice feature. And then once you hit submit, it will load up on that nice new clean project for you. And I'm just going to load up a webinar project that I prepared today. Alrighty, a couple other settings, things that I want you to know about before we go through adding people to this project. In the upper right corner, you're going to see a settings slider icon. These are app-wide settings. If you click into that, you'll notice you can override document font size. This means apply a global font size adjustment to all of your text-based data. So I'm just going to pump that up. And then you'll also see an option for theme. So this is on the just regular Dedoose theme now. If you're an old school Deducer like me, you may want to be on Dedoose Classic. There's also dark mode and a high contrast mode that's better for accessibility. I'm just going to go back to that standard Dedouse mode here. And you'll also notice that's where you can change your password on your account. Alrighty, next up, so if you've already created a project, let's say you want to add other people to the project that you're collaborating with, you can go to the Access workspace. From here, you have a couple different options. You're going to see yourself listed under the default group of full access because you're the project creator. If you wanted to add someone to a full access standard, I guess you could say, you can just go ahead and hit that add user button. You would choose which access group you want them to be a part of. When you're just starting out, you'll just have full access. Hit use selected group and then throw in their email address. The next time they log into Dedoose, they're going to see an option to accept that invitation, and then you'll be in the same project and you can collaborate. Now, if you want to add a different access group, which would limit certain things people can do in the project or limit what they can see, you can hit that Add Access Group button. A bunch of different groups to choose from here. There's two that I like to highlight. One is Guest Access. So this is basically a view but don't touch group. So if you're nervous about anyone, or if you have someone shadowing, really great for external, stakeholders if they want to keep track of the project or look at certain charts, you can create this group and put them in there. The other one I like for collaborating with others is called Project-Wide Assistant. So this is nice because it makes sure that they cannot share the project with anyone else. So they can do everything, they can code, they can import data, they can view everything that you're doing as well, but they just can't come here and manipulate your Access workspace. So that is a preferred option for standard collaborators. But again, if you have a trusted collaborator, the full access group is also nice. Pretty hard to accidentally delete anything in Dedoose because it gives you some warnings. All right, a good question in the chat here. Is there a limit to how many people you can add? No. And that's also what's great about Dedoose. So for instance, in the past, we've used Dedoose in our qual methods courses. We had 50 students in the same project. Now, it got wild, and we were intending for it to get wild because we were showing, concepts related to codebook management and making sure that you have a codebook manager. But no, yeah, you can have as many people as you want in there. And no extra charges for that or anything. Also know that you can change which access groups folks are in. So if someone started off as full access, but maybe, something happened and you want to move them, you can always hit change group, choose which group you want them in, and hit submit. Any questions about sharing a project? Again, adding someone to a project does not impact billing or accounts. Okie dokie. So I'm going to jump back over to the home workspace. This is going to give you a broad overview of your project and give you a preview of some different workspaces. The packed code cloud is back on the home workspace for you. So as you start coding, this will populate for you. It's going to show you the largest frequency, or not the largest frequency. It's going to show you the frequency of your codes via the size of the font. So a nice representation of your coding that you can also get to your underlying excerpts from. Descriptor ratio chart. This is going to show you a breakdown of any categorical, quantitative, or demographic data that you've added to your project. And then, of course, there's the excerpt preview, media preview. So this is your qualitative data. And it's also going to give you a preview of your code book here on the left. I do not recommend doing actual work from the home workspace because it's limiting the features in each one. But I really like checking in on this upper left panel whenever I get into a project, especially if it's a shared project. I like to take a quick scan of how much work has been done. So I check out the code application number, make sure our code book hasn't gotten too inflated. So check on code counts, etc. This is also where you can import data. So when you select that import data button, Dedoose is going to ask what type of data do you want to import. Again, you can do spreadsheets, PDFs, video, images. You can also import other projects from other software, or if you had a different Dedoose project that you had downloaded from back in the day, you can import it here. And you can also just copy and paste information directly into Dedoose. Today, I'm going to hit import text and go with a demo transcript I have prepared for today. Whenever you're first importing data, I recommend importing one file first, assessing the import quality, and then you can do a mass upload of your data. It's just always nice to double check, make sure, everything that you want bolded. If you want your questions, the interviewer questions bolded. If you want timestamps or not, it's good to assess that and how it will look in Dedoose before you do that mass upload. Uploading data should be pretty instantaneous. Alrighty. Next up, let's go to our media workspace. So this is where all of your qualitative data will live. I've uploaded some demo data here for us. One thing folks don't know about is this search documents feature up here. So if you're ever looking for a specific word or phrase, or maybe you know someone said something brilliant, but you're not sure who it was, you can always come in here and do a broad search, and then Dedoose will narrow down those documents for you. So these are the 4 people who were talking about coffee. So that's just a quick search. The autocode features much more advanced searching capabilities in there. Come hang out with us tomorrow during that webinar if you want more info on that. And you can also do the title filter as well. This columns/filters button, this is really useful to change your view of this database. If you want to know who was uploading the data, when it was uploaded, any sort of metadata that you want to attach, you can. You can also use the filtering area just below here. If you wanted to, for instance, isolate all your text data, video data, etc., you can do so here. Dedoose will automatically keep track of that file type, and you can use your descriptors as well. All right, I'm gonna recollapse that. And now let's go into a document here and go over some document-specific settings, and then we'll get to coding. So the first thing I want to bring to your attention, if you ever import data and the font size is not to your liking, remember that you can go to the global app settings in the upper right. Make sure to hit override document font size, and then you can pump this up. That setting is also located in your document-specific settings in the upper left corner of your document. You're going to see a font size area. You can hit settings to bring up your global app settings. Also in this settings panel here for your document is the option to include line numbers. Memos comes pre-selected. This just means there's going to be a little post-it note icon in your document wherever someone may have left a memo on an excerpt. RTL, this just moves the text orientation to the right side of the screen rather than the left. Your color scheme, this is your excerpt color scheme. So what color your excerpts will be. You have a bunch of different options, a per user option, which means my excerpts will be differently colored than other folks' excerpts. There's also a grayscale and a nice teal option if you want a more subtle excerpting colors here. So I'll go with default for now. Highlight, this tells Dedoose if you want your full excerpt highlighted with that color or if you just want the excerpt bar highlighted. I'll come back to this option once we've created some excerpts so that you can see it. To the right of that icon is a little lock icon. If there's ever a mistake in your document, for instance, if something wasn't fully anonymized, let's say we needed to get this name out of here, I could hit that unlock icon, make those adjustments, if I can type, and then you can resave. So if anything's not to your liking that's small, for instance, spacing, or again, just tiny corrections, then you can make them in Dedoose and hit that lock icon once more to relock your document and then hit yes to save your changes. Now, if you have larger adjustments to make, that's why assessing the import quality is important. If we found out that this whole document wasn't anonymized, then I would go back to the original document, do my anonymization outside of Dedoose to make it quicker, and then re-import it. Alrighty. On the upper right, you're going to see a little magnifying glass icon. This allows you to search throughout this specific document. It'll give you the number of times that word came up, and then you can hit next to cycle through to each one. Location search. This is helpful if you're collaborating with another person, or maybe you just noted off where you left for the day coding. Wherever you are in a document, in the bottom left corner, you're going to see a selection count number. So for instance, this is 3423. If I type that in and hit go, Dedoose will place me right there in the transcript. Next up, you have this export document feature. I love using this, especially after I'm done coding a document in my project. When you have highlight excerpted regions selected, what this does is it pumps out a Word document with your coding and track changes comment boxes. So really useful to have a coded local copy of your interview or your data source after your project is done. But also I've used this in the past. If you just want to get away from the computer, sometimes that can be really helpful for your actual analysis, to take a step away from the computer, assess your coding, compare your coding to other people's. You can do so by exporting it there. And lastly, you have an edit media icon. This allows you to manipulate the title. You can include a description. And there's also this clone feature. Just know that you can clone a document that will create a duplicate with all of the code applications and memos on it as well. People use that in creative ways. Alrighty, let's get to coding. So you'll see here on the right, we have our codebook panel. I've created a couple codes to work with today, but there are numerous ways you can go about creating codes. If you've created your codebook outside of Dedoose and you want to import it, just know that you can go to the little exclamation point action panel. You're going to see an option for import codes. That option is also in your codebook view in your codes workspace. I'll show you that a little later. So you can do a mass import of your codes that will include any code definitions that you have in that spreadsheet as well. Another option is to hit this little add root code addition icon when you're viewing a document. So if I click on that button, this is, some demo data taken from an interview with the lead marketing person of Nespresso, because we're coffee obsessed over here. And so let's say we're interested in just some broad codes related to branding. So it's all about branding and marketing. And I'm going to include a description. We're just going to go a really broad, horrible description for a code. Please make more detailed, analytical descriptions when you're actually using your own project. You can also do a custom color for your codes if you want to visualize or separate your codes by color in your code book. You can also enable code weighting. So this is a more advanced feature. I'm not going to actually use it today, but just know that you can add a numerical valence to a code. People like doing this for sentiment analysis. So for instance, if I enabled code weighting, I could put the minimum at -1, the maximum at +1 to indicate, oh, this person is talking about branding in a negative light versus positive. People also use this to quantify things within their qualitative data. So like someone saying they got 5 hours of sleep. And also if you want to just overlay an interpretive scale onto a code, almost like a Likert scale rating, you can do so here. If you're using code weighting, make sure to include the definitions for each weight within your description of your code. That will help you stay consistent, even if you're just working alone. Nice to have all of those mapped up. I'm going to hit submit. And we have our new code here. When you hover over it, the little definition will pop up for you. You'll also see a quotation mark icon. This means excerpt in Dedoose, so you can pull up all data that you've coded with that code. Memo, this is helpful if you want to leave a memo on your actual code. And then the edit code icon will bring this up in case you wanted to revise your description while you're looking at your code. All right, when it comes to actually coding your data, so creating excerpts and coding, I'm going to go through 3 different options here, starting with kind of like the most used method. If you already have codes in your code book, you would highlight the area that you want to code an excerpt. So I'm just going to take this whole answer here, and then I'm going to double click the code that I want to apply. So let's just say she's talking about marketing. So I'm just going to double click marketing. When I do so, you'll see that Dedoose highlights and creates this excerpt for us. You'll see the excerpt parameter bar to the left. If you hover over that, it's going to tell you who created that excerpt and what codes they applied. The selection info box will be kind of outlined in red for you. This is letting you know that you're actively editing this excerpt. So you can add more codes, you can add memos, etc. Excuse me. So let's say we wanted to add branding to this as well. We could just double click branding, or you can also drag and drop the code into that area. So now we have one excerpt here with 3 codes on it. You'll see little X's in case you want to remove the code from the excerpt. If you want to delete the excerpt in its entirety, you would hit that top level X. Okay, so that's one method here, is to just highlight and then double click the code in your codebook to quickly have Dedoose create that excerpt and apply the code. I'm going to pause for a question here. Oh, good question about how to work with Likert scale data. I'll save that for the end, but I can also put a resource in the portal for you. But really good question. All right, another method to use, which is really great for inductive coding and also if you want to create new codes on the fly, is to highlight the excerpt and then hit the space bar on your keyboard. When you hit the space bar, it's going to bring up the quick code widget. This allows you to search for the code that you want to apply, and you can just double click. So really useful when your codebook is fully built out and you wouldn't want to sit here and scroll on the side. You can just search. You can also create new codes from here as well. So let's say they're talking about client engagement. I can just type in engagement, hit enter. You'll see Dedoose created that code and put it in our codebook for us over here. And it also applied the code to the excerpt. So a really quick, efficient way to create codes and apply them to excerpts at the same time. I'm just going to hit that X to get out of here. And I'll do that once more. So highlight. Let's say we're talking about a new code for different research. And let's say they were talking about quantitative research. Boom. So I created a couple new codes. They're both applied to the excerpt. Whenever you create new codes from that quick code widget, please note that you were not prompted to include a description. So that's where you would want to come back over here, hover over the code and click the edit code icon to pull up that code and then include the description. And hit submit. Good question here in the Q&A. How short do codes have to be? So good question. This is more of a methods question and personal preference question, but typically in qualitative research, you want it to be pretty concise and you want it to just capture one concept. So for instance, I wouldn't want to put engagement and branding into one code, and you wouldn't want to accidentally have your code definition as the code title. That will messy up your project pretty quick. So I would say, 3 words or less is ideal. And usually you're just going to try to capture one concept per code. Good question. Alrighty. And let's say you wanted to create an excerpt but leave it uncoded. Maybe something is of interest to you, but you're not sure how to code it. Just know that you can highlight that area and there's a little red quotation mark in the bottom right of the document. That allows you to create an excerpt and leave it uncoded. So we can just click out of here. You could also use your quick code widget and then just delete, whatever code you apply. So whichever method works for you. So now this excerpt is here in your document, uncoded. It's also going to be in your excerpts workspace, which is just a huge database of all excerpts in your project. If you wanted to go back and add a code, you can always click on that excerpt parameter bar to the left, and you'll see the selection info box is outlined in red here, and then you can include your codes. Any questions about coding from a technical perspective? So creating excerpts, applying those codes. And then we'll talk a little bit about subcodes in codebook management. One thing I want to note on the list of things I wish I would have known a decade ago when I was first using Dedoose is how to adjust your excerpt length. So let's say with this excerpt here, it's just covering these 3 sentences or so, but we want it to include the sentence below it. To adjust this excerpt, I can click on that bar, so this activates it. And then I'm going to right-click wherever I either want to extend it to or where I want to minimize it to. So in this case, I'm going to right-click after coffee. Once you do so, you'll see an option to set excerpt start and end. In this case, I want to set excerpt end to draw this out. And so now this excerpt is meatier for us. Alrighty, let's talk a little bit about codebook management. Know that everything, well, nearly everything I talk about related to codebook management can be done from this smaller codes panel while you're actively viewing your data source and also in your codebook. I want to talk about how to create different subcodes and child codes while you're viewing a document. So let's say under research, we wanted a distinct code for qualitative research versus quantitative. If you wanted to create that code and have it be nested under research immediately, you can hover over research. You're going to see a tiny little addition icon, and that allows you to add a subcode or child code, as Dedoose calls it. Include your description and hit submit. So now we have that code qualitative nested underneath research. So that's one technique. You can also click and drag and drop. So we have this top level code called quantitative. We also want that nested under research. We can click, drag, and drop on top of research. And now this will indent quantitative underneath research for us. You can also hover over a code, click the edit code icon, and you're going to see some different icons here or buttons here on the bottom. Reparent, this means nest it somewhere else. So you could hit reparent and then choose which code you want it underneath. Make root, this means bring it back to the top level. Merge, if you wanted to merge 2 codes together, you can do so. Click merge, choose which code you want to be the primary. This is the code that will stay in your codebook and the secondary will be deleted. You can also do mass merging in the codes workspace. We'll go over that in a minute. We have another question here about excerpts. Can you join 2 excerpts together that aren't in the same spot in the transcript? No, no. You can't merge them like into 2 excerpts, but via your codebook and your code system, you could perhaps indicate that those 2 topics are connected. Good question. Alrighty, another good question in the Q&A about memos. One of the most powerful use of memos is by connecting them to your excerpts. So I quickly want to show you how to create and link memos to your excerpts, and then I'll post, we have a long form video about memos that I can link you to. So when you're actively editing an excerpt, you're going to see a post-it note icon in the upper right corner of that selection info box. If you click on that, this is going to open up the create and link memo option. So you can include a title here So let's say branding questions. Let's say I had a question for my team about how we're going to code this excerpt, or maybe I have a new code suggestion. You can log your thoughts here for your team. You'll also notice that there is a memo group option, so you can create different memo groups. I've already created several that we recommend. So analytical memos, this is going to log your real-time analysis of excerpts, very helpful for scaffolding your writing and building out your findings. Code development, so this is what I was talking about, any questions related to your codes. And you can also create a new group. Let's just go broad questions. I'm going to type that in and select it and then hit save. This is really one of the only areas in Dedoose where you have to hit save. Everything else is being saved automatically. And so now when you're in this document, you'll see that post-it note icon. You can always click on it to bring up the memo. You're going to see who created the memo and what groups it in. And they'll also be logged in your memos workspace. So you can filter, by different memo groups that you've created, or just go into them and see them. It's nice about memos. Again, really great for scaffolding your analysis. Once you start selecting them, you can hit that export button and you can include your excerpts side by side with your memos. So really helpful if you found a quote that's really representative of a theme in your study and you've done an analytical memo on it, you can have that exported side by side. So there's a little preview of your memos workspace. Alrighty, so let's go to codes. About 10 minutes left here. I want to briefly talk about some different codebook management tools that you have with Dedoose 10. So when you go to your codebook view, this is going to give you a nice overview of your full codebook along with their definitions, who created the code, when they created it, excerpt count, and also memo count. If you're using code weighting in your project, you'll also see the weight range of that code. First off, if you want to revise what data is being presented to you here, know that you can click on that columns button. And since we're not using code weights, I'm just going to unselect that. We don't have any memos on our codes yet, so I'm going to unselect that as well. And so you'll see you can just clean up your view. If you had really long, detailed code descriptions, maybe you want to make more room for those. And then again, you have code creator and when it was created. The sort by allows you to put a custom order on this. So you can do it by title alphabetically, you can do it by code creator, and you can also do it by most used codes. So excerpt count, for example, if you want all of your top used codes at the top of your code book, you can readjust it. Excerpt count, this is going to control how the excerpts are calculated in your excerpt count column. So right now it's on explicit code count, which means it's a one-to-one number. How many times did I use the code marketing? So I could click on that 8 to bring up those 8 excerpts. What's nice about Dedoose is you can then click into those excerpts and continue coding without returning to the original document. So really useful tool if you're doing like broad open coding and then you want to code by topical code. You can come in here, click on your code excerpts, continue coding, add subcodes, add more nuanced codes, and hit next to go to the next excerpt. So a really useful tool there. Matching media, this is going to tell you where those excerpts came from in your data set. So which interviews in this case. So that's explicit code count. Child sum code count would turn this into how many times is the code research used, and also it's going to add up all subcodes beneath it. So it's going to give you a more topical view if you're using subcodes in your project. So really great for thematic analysis. If you want like a more thematic view of any time they're talking about research, I want it tallied up in the top level research code, you can hit child sum code count. Color scheme, this is appropriate to use if you're using custom color coding on your codes. Expand collapse, this is just going to give you a full view of your codebook versus collapsing your subcodes. Auto upcode, this is important. I highly recommend leaving auto upcode off in your project. If you turn this on, it's going to give you a link to a learning center here. That's probably a video of me talking about the dangers of this. I'm going to hit yes for demonstration purposes. If you turn this on, this means anytime I use the code qualitative, Dedoose will automatically include the code research on the excerpt for me. That may seem like a nice feature that you want to use for your project. However, it's very dangerous to use, especially early on in your project, because if I decide I want this code nested elsewhere, Dedoose can't course correct. It also makes it more difficult to isolate just the excerpts that you've coded with research, because it's going to be tagged on everything beneath it as well. So I highly recommend leaving this off. There is an option in the bottom left. You're going to see an option for Upcode Wizard. This is also called retroactive upcode. This allows you at the end of your project, you can make a copy of your project in case you don't like the output. So make a copy. You can do retroactive upcode on the copy. Dedoose will cycle through and add all top level codes to any child codes that you've used on your excerpts. So again, please defer that decision down the road after you're done with your project unless you are certain that your codebook hierarchy is not going to change and that you want all top level codes represented on those subcoded excerpts. Alrighty, if you wanted to import your codebook here, you can do so. You're going to see the little import, the arrow pointing down option that allows you to import an Excel file with your codes and code definitions. You can also export these. I like having an exported version when I'm coding, especially on a new project, so that I have my code definitions just there in my face. Really helps increase trustworthiness and reliability. On the bottom here, you're going to see more options for adding codes. This is just, the same add code button. You'll also see an option to reorder code, so you can do a custom order of your code book. Sometimes people like putting the most used or like the most important codes of their project towards the top, so you can do so. And then when you start selecting multiple codes, you'll see options pop up here. For instance, you can do mass merging of codes. So I just selected 3 codes. If I hit merge, Dedoose is going to ask what's the primary code that you want to keep. And then it's going to merge those 2 codes into this one. I'm going to hit cancel in this case. You can also bring all codes back to the top level. So if you wanted, for instance, both quant and qual back at the top level, you can select them and make root. And you can also, mass delete codes as well. So if you're ever doing, open categorical coding to begin with, know that you can create a copy of the project to kind of timestamp that stage of your project. And then you could come back to your original project and do some codebook management, maybe merge codes, maybe do mass deletions to clean up your codebook. And then you have both versions available for you. So you have a sequential stage model to your project. The last thing I want to leave you with from this workspace is the addition of the code charts option. So you'll see vertical navigation buttons connecting you to the more advanced features. So autocode, text analytics. I shouldn't say more advanced, just like more powerful technical tools. But code charts I would consider one of the more powerful features of qualitative research. So you'll have your code counts chart. You can manipulate this to view, your top level codes in bar chart form, or you can switch it to a pie. Know that you can always click into these bars to bring up the coded excerpts behind them. So again, really great filtering tool, great tool to continue your analysis. Code application is going to give you a breakdown of your coding by document. So in this case, we have a couple different interviews here. This is telling us we haven't done much coding on our interviews, But with this one, for example, they're talking about marketing a lot. You can click in to those matrices to pull up the data behind them. Code co-occurrence is a huge heat map showing you where two excerpts are, or excuse me, where two codes are overlapping on the same excerpt. This is not a great example. I should pull up a different project for you. I will if we have time at the very end. But this is going to give you a breakdown of how many times, like research and branding, for instance, were co-occurring. Really great for developing themes if you're doing thematic analysis. You can come here and really reflect on why are these two codes interacting. That's also why it's powerful to have one excerpt and apply multiple codes on that one excerpt rather than creating excerpts on top of one another. So one excerpt with as many codes as warranted equals a good time. Your pack code cloud, this is going to give you, again, that view of the frequency of your coding by the font size here, and you can do some customization of this chart as well. Sometimes folks like revising what codes are included in the chart via the datasets workspace. That's the huge filtering area of Dedoose. And then you can do a nice screenshot for a paper presentation. And then lastly, you have code times descriptor. This would be a more advanced chart. This allows you to put your codes in relation to any descriptor data that you have in your project. In the webinar portal, I included a past webinar I did on descriptors. If you're interested in how to use those, I recommend that be your first stop. So, all right, today, I hope I've left you with enough knowledge. You can start your project, create it, add people to it if you need to, import your data, start coding. Think about your approach to codebook management. Make sure that you're mapping your method onto Dedoose rather than letting Dedoose or any digital tool dictate your method. I'm going to stay on to answer some questions and pause the recording here. Thank you all for coming, and I hope you have a great week.